everyone, and welcome to the 200th episode of the Molehill Mountain podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Eisen, and to celebrate this most auspicious of milestones, tonight I have decided to be positive. In other words, I'm only going to talk about things that make me happy. So, not things I have a problem with, not things that make me unhappy, not things I'm going to complain about, but things that make me happy. So it's going to be a happy, positive show tonight, which means it's going to be short. Now, I have no idea how long we'll go. To be fair, I'm a miserable curmudgeon, so it was actually difficult for me to come up with some topics. Took all week, but I wrote down some things that I'm genuinely happy with. So, Jordan says, Shyamalan-style twist, being negative makes you happy. No, being you know, I don't like being unhappy. I'm happy when I'm happy. So, first topic. Let's talk about the Xbox Game Showcase. So, and yes, I know some of you saw me on Twitter speaking about the Xbox Game Showcase at length, but we're going to keep it positive. I'm going to focus on the things I liked and just ignore everything else for this week. So, the second game they showed right after Halo Infinite was a preview for State of Decay 3. It starts out with some woman in the snowy wilderness at night, sitting at a campfire, all alone, exposed to the elements, and off up on a hill is a big bad wolf staring at her with glowing eyes. And she looks at that wolf, and she goes, "Ah!" And the wolf is like, "Oh God, jeez, all right, lady, man," and leaves. I enjoyed that. I thought that was fun. The next morning, she's walking around, and she sees a patch of blood on the ground. And she looks at it. She looks around. She looks at the patch of blood again. She kneels down, and she jams her fingers in the blood, gets some blood on her fingers, and goes, "That's blood." And she keeps going. And then she looks through the scope of her gun that she has, and she spots the wolf, presumably the same one from last night that she went at. And its body is torn open, and it's dying as a zombie deer eats it alive. And the zombie deer looks at her and goes, "Ah!" with all zombie face. That genuinely made me laugh out loud. The zombie deer. Not since one of the Onichambara games where they had zombie orcas have I been that pleased to see zombie wildlife. I really liked that. That made me chortle with delight. And that's all I have to say about the Xbox Game Showcase. So, let's move on. Jordan says, Xbox One, now Series X. I want the next one to be called the Xbox 720 just to keep the nonsense going. Yeah, let's see. It was Xbox, then 360, then Xbox One. Zachary and I talked about this a while back, but so Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox, I forget what we went, I think we called it Xbox 4 or something like that. You know, Xbox 360, 1, 4. So, but yeah, the naming convention of the Xbox is kind of weird. But, oh well. So, moving on. I would like to talk about Freddy vs. Jason. The movie's nearly 20 years old now, but the movie was nearly 15 in the making. Fans had been speculating since the early 90s when now everyone, Freddy versus Jason, and then at the end of 9, Jason Goes to Hell the final Friday. Freddy's glove reaches up out of the ground, grabs Jason's mask, and yanks it down. Oh my god! Oh god! Yeah, it would be like 11 or 12 years later, or something like that, before we saw anything. And so I'm a horror fan. I love me some horror. And I would say probably the Nightmare on Elm Street series is my favorite. Lovely premise. My sister and I did a best movie premises video a couple years ago, and that was one of my selections, the premise to A Nightmare on Elm Street. Because what a wonderful premise. A killer who gets you in your dreams. Well, that's pretty great, because if you think about it, Jaws, it's about a killer shark. Great, wonderful, but as long as you don't go in the water, Jaws can't get you. Jason, yeah, great, but as long as you stay out of Camp Crystal Lake, you're going to be fine. But Freddy Krueger? No matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, eventually, you will fall asleep. So that's a hell of a premise. So always been a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I like the Friday the 13th movies too. So I was always looking forward to a Freddy versus Jason movie. And they wrote lots of scripts, and I've actually read several of them over the years. A lot of interesting ideas for that franchise. And I was always wondering exactly what they would do with Freddy versus Jason, because really it was only ever a title. Freddy versus Jason! Okay, cool. But what exactly are you going to do with that? Because as fans of the individual franchises would know, Freddy exists in the dream world and Jason exists in the physical world. So they can't really interact unless Jason goes to sleep, in which case Freddy'd just kill him because that's his realm. Or if someone yanked Freddy out of the dream world, and in which case Jason would just rip him in half, probably literally. So I always thought, you know what, they're probably not going to do a literal, fisticuffs version of Freddy versus Jason. Not literally Freddy and Jason punching each other. That would be silly. I'm sure it will be much more esoteric. So Freddy versus Jason will probably... This was me speculating before the movie came out. Really back before much internet either. There was internet, but it wasn't what we had today. There was no podcasting. You have to have a connection to Elm Street in order to be stalked by Freddy. No, you don't. But some of the movies, much like you don't necessarily have to go to Camp Crystal Lake. That's just where Jason is. Although I mean, it does say in Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, he pretty much eliminates the entire population of Springwood or something like that, which is more than one street. And what's-her-face yells at him. She says, but this isn't that city. He says, every town has an Elm Street. So it does somewhat imply that he's locked to a particular street, but that never made any sense. And none of the majority of the movies don't really make a big deal about Elm Street specifically. I mean, think about the first movie. Yeah, Nancy and Johnny Depp live on the same street. They live across from each other, but Rod and Tina probably don't. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street was really... the title was really meant to evoke any town, anywhere, nice, quiet suburban neighborhood. The every town has an Elm Street line, and that's pretty true. You can find Elm Streets pretty much anywhere. Tiger says I don't like horror movies, but I like reading up on their lore for some reason. Well, they can be pretty interesting. So I was thinking that the premise for Freddy vs. Jason would be more along the lines of a battle of the minds or wills, so to speak. Basically, Freddy and Jason are targeting the same group of kids. Freddy's trying to get them in their dreams, and Jason's trying to get them in the real world, and who can get them first or who can get the most. And they actually did a little bit of that in the finished movie. But to my surprise, they actually made a literal Freddy versus Jason is really Freddy and Jason punching the hell out of each other. And it sounds stupid, and it is, but it's wonderful. I mean, they beat the ever-loving, literally bloody crap out of each other. It is glorious. Freddy just kicks the ever-loving crap out of Jason in the dream world, and then he gets yanked out of the dream world where he has to fight Jason. You think, oh man, it's all over. But no, it is like a 10-minute long drag-out, drop-down slugfest where they're just punching and kicking and throwing things at each other and stabbing and slashing and gouging and ripping. Oh my god, it is wonderful. I loved it. I still do. Is it a good movie? No. But I love it anyway. I actually think what's interesting is, as I had mentioned, I have read several different scripts for various proposals for what Freddy vs. Jason could be. A Tiger says, I do like Freddy's puns. I do have a chuckle with his humor. Yeah, it kind of depends on which movie you're talking about. He started out not being very funny. More ironic than funny. I mean, about the funniest thing he did in the first movie was, hey Tina, watch this. And then it lops off two of his fingers. He's like, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, that's really funny. That's about the funniest thing, or something like, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. That's about as funny as he got. Then when you get to especially 4, 5, and 6, then he gets really clownish. Which, I mean, once an enemy or a villain is overexposed like Krueger was, well, he's not scary anymore, so what else are you going to do with them? But anyway, back to Freddy vs. Jason. One thing I really like that they did about them with the movie is they referred back to I think it's called Hypnosil, which came in that anti-dream drug, which was mentioned in Friday or Nightmare 3, which is a great sequel, by the way. So essentially, Krueger exists, Jason is dead, but Krueger is no longer a problem because all the Elm Street or that area kids have been pretty much institutionalized and given Hypnosil so they can't dream, and then they just smothered Freddy's memory so no one really knew about him other than just some small urban legends, but not enough for him to have any power. Well, they escape the asylum, they start talking about Freddy, which gives him power, which brings him back. But what he does is he actually gets Jason, resurrects him somehow, because, movie's got to start somehow, sends him to Springwood or wherever the hell it is, and has them kill people. And they're like, oh my god, it must be Freddy. It's like, okay, if you say so. And then the kids are like, okay, so we've got Freddy and Jason, what the hell are we going to do? Okay, well, let's, our best bet is to drag Freddy out of the dream world and have Jason kill him, and then try not to die ourselves. And that's what happens. And it's pretty great. Now, you may be interested to know. Probably not, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Tiger says, this movie sucks, but I'm loving it. The true definition of ironic. Yeah. Pinhead versus Freddy would make more sense. Ghostbusters versus Freddy. He's a spirit of some sort. Could work. Let's see. What was I talking about? So I went to the premiere in Vegas to see Freddy vs. Jason a month before it opened wide. And I got to see Robert Englund and Freddy makeup, and who played Jason? Ken Kersinger, I think, did the role for that movie. And they did a little, like, pre-fight weigh-in. It was goofy, but, whatever. So I drove all the way up there, sat through that, watched the movie. They actually did not show the last 60 seconds of the film. They're like, see it in theaters to find out who won, or whatever. It's like, whatever. I always thought it was kind of, who's going to win? It's like, the kids are going to win. The ones that survive. Both Freddy and Jason will die. That's how all of these... that's how all horror movies end for the most part. The bad guy loses. The good guys that survive win. That's not surprising. I haven't seen any of the Alien versus Predator movies, but who wins? I would imagine the surviving people. So, yeah, I got to go to Vegas. Then I saw it with my sister and one of her friends, I think, a month later. And saw the last 60 seconds of the movie, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But, yeah, Freddy vs. Jason, it's an interesting film. I remember... I was going to say clearly, but apparently I don't. I remember reading a review back in 2001, 2, 3, whenever the hell it was. And the reviewer did not like Freddy vs. Jason, which I don't have a problem with. What I found really interesting, and I wish I had saved the review or could remember more about it, but what I remember genuinely wondering is if the reviewer had actually seen the same movie I did. Because I was reading his review, and I didn't have a problem with him not liking the movie. What I found particularly odd was, and I wish I could remember specifically what it was, but I read through the review and I'm like, that didn't actually happen in the movie, though. What movie were you watching, dude? Did you get up, go to the bathroom, and then wander back into the wrong theater? What? It was... I remember being just taken aback how this person got the movie just factually wrong. I don't have a problem with their opinion. I don't mind that they didn't like it. I don't mind that they outright hated it. I was just like genuinely curious as to if they saw the movie or were just... I mean, they knew enough that I'm sure they saw it, but they got enough completely wrong that I was like, is there a different version of this movie out there? Did they see a work print? What happened here? No matter who wins, we lose. I think that was the Alien versus Predator tag, I think, right? Yeah. Mark says, I saw the news about you being positive. Are you okay? You look terrible. Yeah, well, I don't smile well, so that's what happens. Yep, this is just my face. That's what happens. A little bit of razor burn, but other than that, I'm doing okay. So yes, Freddy vs. Jason. I like it very much. And then they let's see, what did they do after that? There were no more Nightmare films, which is a shame. But there was a Friday the 13th, a remake. Did Jason X come out before or after that? I don't remember, but there was a remake of Friday the 13th, which was okay. It was fine. But I guess it just didn't do very well, because I think that was 2009 and just nothing. They were going to do a Friday the 13th TV series, but I haven't heard anything about that for years. Although they're doing a Chucky TV series, and apparently that is actually happening. They were going to do a Tremors TV series again. The first TV series was actually pretty good. Saw the trailer for the pilot and it looked great, but no one picked it up, and I hope we get to see the pilot someday because it looks cool. Tiger says, favorite Freddy line is still welcome to prime time, bitch. Yeah, that's from 3, where he grabs the gal and jams her head into the TV. Yeah, that's... It's interesting. That movie was where I think Krueger really rode the line best between funny and outright clownish. So yeah, 3's great. I actually like 2. That's a pretty divisive entry in in the in the films because it's just so weird. But I think people's biggest problems with it was that it kind of breaks the rules, but the rules it's breaking were more solidified in the following movies. You know, a lot of people really had the problem with him just kind of coming out of the dream world and wandering around the pool party slashing at people. And it's like, oh, that can't happen. It's fine. I think 2 is good? No, I don't think most of the movies are good. That's the thing about horror, is very rarely are the movies actually good, but there are some really great horror films. I do think the first one is solidly good. I think the third one is solidly good. I think New Nightmare is solidly good. Freddy vs. Jason is not good, but it's just so damn entertaining. To me, anyway. Certainly not that one reviewer I was talking about. He liked it so little that he was making stuff up about it. that he couldn't keep the movie correct in his memory. B says, congrats on 200 episodes. Thank you. Jordan says, years later, the Friday the 13th reboot is a cult classic. Now the same can't be said for the Elm Street reboot. But oh man, Jordan, until you just mentioned it, I completely forgot about the Elm Street reboot. I'll talk about that in just a second. Tiger says, what are the rules? Well, what I was saying is, Krueger's relegated to the dreamland, but you can yank him out of the dream. But in part 2, he just takes over the body of one guy who moved into Nancy Thompson's house. It's more of a, like when Jesse falls... Is it Jesse? I think so. When he falls asleep, Krueger can take over his body. And it's like, well, that's not how it works. Yeah, but this is the first sequel, so we say it works, it works. They never really did that again. But there's some genuinely good stuff in 2. There's some really wonderful visuals. That's one of the things I really like about the Nightmare movies is throughout the series there are just some really bonkers visuals. That are just really neat to look at. Imagine if someone like Tim Burton or someone had ever done a Nightmare film. Imagine what that would have looked like. Jordan says the Chucky show is going to be a direct continuation of Curse and the Cult movies, which in turn were continuations of the previous movies. So yeah, the show is going to be in continuity. So, and I love the Child's Play stuff, so I'm really looking forward to that. Chaos says, my horror films start and stop with John Carpenter's vampires. I wouldn't really call that a horror film. I'd call that more just an action movie with some horror elements. But I know a lot of people really don't like that movie, but I thought it was entertaining enough. You know, I sat through it. It had some good gore in it. So. And sometimes that's all you need. Tiger says, I'd pay good money to see Burton do a Nightmare movie, yeah. Well, he did Nightmare Before Christmas, so close enough. Oh, pardon me. So, yeah, Nightmare remake. Positive. It's a positive show. I actually... mentioned this in a video I did with my this also is something I mentioned in a video I did with my sister, and I'm trying to remember what the premise of that video was. I think it was like the 3 most memorable lines from different movies. And in the Nightmare remake, he kills a dude. Krueger kills a dude in his sleep, and you see the guy dead in the real world, and the camera zooms in on like his eyeball and enters the dream world, and he's bound and hung upside down, and Krueger walks up to him and he says, did you know that the brain continues living for about 7 minutes after you die? That means we still have 6.5 minutes to play. And I thought, whoa. That is a super creepy idea that none of the previous films had explored. The fact that, when you die or your heart stops or something like that, your brain is still kicking around for a couple of minutes, which would give Kruger the opportunity to continue tormenting you until you're actually brain dead. That's pretty horrifying. Knowing that you're dead and you're going to cease to exist in a couple of minutes, and that last couple of minutes, Kruger's just going to be stabbing you. Oh man, that was a really great addition. And they didn't do much with it in the film. It's kind of like a throwaway mention, but I don't know that they needed to do more with that because it's effective as it is. I also rather liked the idea of micro naps. Where people in the film are like, they're on 2 days no sleep and they just kind of nod off, just which gives Kruger just a split second to breach the barrier and do something real quick. I thought that was a nice addition to the mythos too. But this is a positive episode, and that's really all I can talk about regarding the remake. Jackie Earle Haley was a interesting choice for Kruger. I like the fact that they didn't try and ape Robert Englund's performance, which good idea. Make it your own because you're just not going to replicate that. So. Thompson says, wouldn't mind a prequel about how Charles became the Lakeshore Strangler, how he got into voodoo. Brad Dourif ages like fine wine. I wouldn't recast even for a human Chucky. It was, the flashback was pushing it in Cult of Chucky. Brad Dourif is old now, but I wouldn't mind. I said the same thing about Kruger. The Springwood slasher. It would be a very different film, and different enough to probably put off fans. I probably wouldn't even release it under the Nightmare label. At most, like Springwood Slasher, A Nightmare on Elm Street, or something like that, Because Kruger's backstory is pretty damn scary. It's horrifying. It could be a good movie. It probably wouldn't be a very fun movie, though. It'd be very different. Same thing with who knows what Charles Lee Ray's we do know, same personality, so it could be fun. But he's now possessing, I forget the character's name, but Fiona Dourif, the actor, his daughter. So his daughter is actually playing him now, which is pretty great. So I'm really excited to see where more Child's Play goes. Chaos says, do I watch the Mission Impossible movies? If so, which is your favorite? I have seen the first 4. I think 3 and 4 are... I'm trying to keep them apart in my mind. I think 3 and 4 I liked the best. They were the closest to actual Mission Impossible. See, I'm a huge fan of the TV series. In fact, I might go so far as to say the original Mission Impossible series is my favorite TV show of all time. So, the closer the movies actually get to being Mission Impossible movies, which I, as a Mission Impossible fan, want to see in a Mission Impossible movie, the better I'm probably going to enjoy them. But that's generally not really what they wanted to do with those movies. They just wanted to make them Tom Cruise action films, which is a choice, just not my preference. But I have somewhere back there in my DVD collection all of the original Mission Impossible DVDs, so or all the original episodes on DVD rather. So that's fine. I haven't seen 5 or 6. I think it's up to 6. I haven't seen them, but I'd watch them. They're enjoyable. They're just not broadly not what I want to see in a Mission Impossible movie. It's not Mission Impossible to me. It's just a Tom Cruise action movie, which certainly has its merits. Jordan says, in my younger days, I was able to stay awake for 3 days straight. No more. I was up for about 40 hours last week. Something. All our servers took a poop, so it was pretty much all hands on deck for a day and a half. Tiger says, I like the backstory for Freddy, but I think it's best not having a movie fleshing it out. Probably, because it would... I don't know if... Never say never, and I think it could work, but based on the subject matter and who Kruger is and what he did, it might just be kind of gross and uncomfortable. Like I had mentioned earlier, wouldn't be fun, and if it wouldn't be fun, is there much point in doing a Nightmare prequel? I don't know. Maybe someone would find a way to do it. Don't know. Chaos says Rogue Nation and Fallout, which were Mission Impossible 5 and 6, were great. Yeah, I'd heard they were good. I enjoyed 3 and 4 mostly. Saw the first. I think I saw the first one in theater, and probably the second. I think I've seen all the 4 I've seen. I think I saw them in theaters. Jordan says you could also do an adaptation of the original screenplay where it was a demon that possessed the good guy doll. The original title was Batteries Not Included. Oh, yeah, I remember something like that. Tiger says, I see what you mean. It can work. Just because it can doesn't mean it'd be good enough to really warrant the trouble of a movie. True. But, I mean, hey, screenwriters, you want to take a crack at it? Go for it. What do you got to lose? Okay. GamePolitics. Y'all remember GamePolitics? Maybe y'all don't. GamePolitics was a news blog started in 2005 by Dennis McCauley. Was picked up by the ECA in 2007, I think, something like that. And then we closed the doors in 2015, I believe, because we weren't making any money. We all had real jobs, and we couldn't afford to run it anymore. But for that, 10 years. I wrote for the site, by the way. I was a contributing editor and community manager, moderator kind of dude. I really enjoyed that experience, and if it were not for GamePolitics, I probably would not. I wouldn't be doing this podcast. Probably might not even be doing YouTube videos. Certainly would not have had a small writing career. I've written for IGN, The Escapist, a couple others. I've been paid for it too. Really never thought that would happen. Tiger says, haven't thought about that website in years. Yeah, the website, yeah, GamePolitics. So, for those who don't know, it was a news blog that focused on the intersection of video games and politics. So, our wheelhouse, our bread and butter, were any laws that sought to influence, address, or regulate video games. Or any time politicians or news peoples would talk about video games. So you get, oh god, these games are gonna make kids into killers, and oh, video games are gonna make our kids have sex, and oh, video games like Dungeons and Dragons, rock music, and everything else before it was that kind of scapegoat for all of society's ills. Not the gamers, mind you. The games themselves. So, I would like, if I may, and it's my podcast, so I may, to tell you how I got started with GamePolitics is kind of a funny story. So, I was at work. I had moved to California to work for my current company in January of 2005. Couple months, still love my Postal video, thanks. Yeah, I'm very proud of that one, actually. The Running with Scissors, the developer behind Postal, is actually a fan of that video too, and they actually sent me codes for their games. I actually met Vince Desi and a couple of them at E3 in 06. They are very strong personalities, I will give them that. So I was at work. I'd been working there for 4 or 5 months. So we're now in the late spring, early summer time frame. And Harold, one of the folks I worked with, came up to me and he says, do you know who this Jack Thompson guy is? And I looked at him and I said, no. And he says, well, did you hear about Grand Theft Auto San Andreas? And I said, yeah, I know about that game. Did you hear that there's this like mode where you can have sex? And I said, what? That doesn't sound true. He says, according to this guy Jack Thompson, there's this game that allows this realistic sex stuff in it, but you have to put in a secret code. And I said, well, that sounds like bullshit, but I don't know. I don't know who that is, and I had not heard this. So I'm referencing Hot Coffee, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. So I said, I'll look it up. And so I Googled probably Jack Thompson Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and that took me to the comment section of an article on GamePolitics, a blog that had actually launched like 3 months earlier, something like 3-4 months earlier. It launched in like March or April of 2005, and so I read this comment that Jack Thompson had put in the comment section, and I read it. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, this guy is an asshole. Second, I mean, just in the way he writes. I mean, he just seems like a really unpleasant person. Even if everything he says is true, no need to be a dick about it, dude. But I read it and I went, that sounds like BS to me. So I looked into it and found out that San Andreas, one of the Grand Theft Auto games, which had come out the previous October, had if you used a cheating device like a Game Shark or Game Genie or hacked a file in the PC version, you could access an unfinished mini game where the main character would have sex with a NPC. And it was a mini game with like meters and stuff that would control your thrusting, but both characters were entirely clothed. The UI was rough. It was clearly something Rockstar was toying around with, and then either it didn't work, or it was too stupid, or they figured it would get an AO rating, and they said, yeah, okay, junk this. There was literally no way to actually access this content without hacking the game. If you just bought a PlayStation 2, plugged in the disc, no matter what you did, if you played the game regular, there's absolutely no way you could possibly get at this content, which again, I remind you, is essentially the same thing as taking two clothed Barbie dolls and slamming them against each other. So, even if it were in the game proper, the game was already rated M for, among other things, strong sexual content. So, basically, everything Jack Thompson said was completely wrong. But I was just kind of fascinated by it. And I kept my eye on this website because Jack Thompson kept posting obnoxious crap in the comments section. And every time he would, I went, wow, one, what a jerk, and two, that's probably not true. and I would go fact check it and find out what was actually happening. That was actually my introduction to, and then after a while I started actually reading the site and seeing, things that were happening in the world of video games and politics. And by the end of the summer, I started emailing Dennis McCauley, the founder of the site, every time I found a typo or something. Or occasionally I'd come across some news online that wasn't covered at GamePolitics, and I'd forward it to him, say, hey, you've probably seen this, but in case you haven't, here you go. Or, as I mentioned, I'd point out his typos. By very early, I think my birthday, February 1st, 06, Dennis contacted me and asked me if I'd like to write for the site. And he told, I met him later that year at E3, and he says, you know why I brought you on board? I said, why? He says, because you kept correcting my typos. Oh, all right. Good reason as any. But what was funny is, I've never liked writing. I mean, when I was in school, I hated writing. I did not want, give me a book report or whatever, I didn't want to do it. So even creative writing classes, I couldn't stand. Technical writing, didn't want to. So Dennis says, hey, Andrew, would you like to write for the site? And I thought to myself, no, I don't like writing. So I told him, yeah, okay. And I learned that I do like writing so long as I'm writing about something that I care about and want to write about. And that's how I got started writing for GamePolitics. And less than a year later, I picked up I started freelancing for IGN. I think I had published my first piece in The Escapist like the following December. GamePolitics started my career in writing. A couple of years later, I did a YouTube video, and those actually did pretty well. I despite my my videos being in the viewership of the dozens, I have 11,400 and some people subscribed to my channel. They might all be dead because they're certainly not watching my videos, but I do have a bunch of subscribers. And hey, 11,500 people subscribe to my channel that don't watch my stuff. I speak to you now, even though, well, you're probably not watching, but I guess I'm sorry for not producing content that you like. I guess you're not interested in my thoughts on Gem and the holograms. So, that's how I started writing. It also taught, over the years of writing for GamePolitics and IGN and others, I improved my craft, and it also taught me the value of, not just the value of fact-checking, which is more important these days than ever, but not just that you should fact-check things when you hear, oh, someone's saying a thing, or, oh, I saw here that this thing happened. Not only that you should fact-check that, but how to fact-check that. GamePolitics was a lot of fun for me. It helped me develop a skill set that I didn't even realize I had, and also helped equip me to face modern day in other ways. These days, I am a lot less likely to be forsnookered by fake news, like believing a stupid meme on Facebook, than I was when I was in my young 20s. So, hey, thanks, GamePolitics. And I guess, in a way, thanks, Jack Thompson. And, sorry I ended your career. I mean, I can only assume I ended your career because the very last time I ever heard from you was an interaction between you and me. So, yeah, I'll take credit for that. You're welcome, world. I mean, he's not dead. He still, for some reason, someone hires him as a lecturer at a college or something. I don't know why they would do that. but that do. The last time the Supreme Court decision where video games are protected speech happened, and that pretty much shut everything down. All the politicians pretty much lost interest after that, and so did Jack Thompson. But about a year after that, Jack Thompson decided to, or at least claimed he was going to sue Facebook because there were a bunch of I Hate Jack Thompson groups on Facebook, and I'm gonna punch Jack Thompson in the face Facebook groups. And Thompson, at least the way he presented himself, the way this grown man decided to react to that was to threaten to sue Facebook for $3 billion or something, not that much, but it was some absurd amount over the existence of these groups. So I wrote him and I said, did you try reporting these groups using the tools that Facebook provides? You know, little upper right corner, drop down, report, targeted violence, that kind of thing, whatever the format was back in the day, 2009 or something like that. And he called me an idiot. So I reported the group, and it was taken down the next day. So I wrote an article about that. One day later, Jack Thompson Group is taken offline, something like that. That was literally the last I ever heard from Jack Thompson. Not just in personal correspondence, but he never made news again. I think he was once interviewed on like a local AM station. Like some dude doing a local broadcast had him for an interview, but other than that, so do I really think that I ended him? No, he was just done. But let's see what the chat's going about. Tiger says, "Oh God, it's that guy that keeps correcting my typos." Yeah, maybe if he writes some stuff, he'll leave me alone. Yeah. Tiger says he's barred from practicing law in Florida. I believe that's true. Yes. Do you know how hard that is to do? Yeah. Tiger says, I don't like Jack either, but I wouldn't use I want to punch Jack in the face. Oh yeah, there was a Facebook group titled, not just I want to punch him, although there was one. There was one that was, I will pay you to punch Jack Thompson in the face. And to be perfectly clear, those groups should have been taken down. That absolutely is targeted harassment and is not okay. Jack Thompson is an asshole. Both things are true simultaneously. And to Facebook's credit, in this specific instance, I reported the groups and they were taken down within a day. So, no $300 million lawsuit necessary. I mean, I certainly wouldn't begrudge Thompson from pointing out that there are groups on Facebook doing stuff, but I do think it's at least incumbent on an individual to at least take the I mean, yeah, those groups shouldn't be there, but just report them. And, you could make a case for perhaps Facebook should be more diligent in making sure groups of this type don't get posted. Like, maybe put in filters for punch or hate. Anytime someone makes a group with the word hate in it or punch, take a little look-see. But, yeah. I miss GamePolitics. That was I am genuinely sad that we just could not afford to keep it going. And as I mentioned earlier, it was just a matter of money. James and Zachary and I were the only ones writing for the site. The ECA had decided they did not want to pay for the site anymore, but they allowed us to run it if we could. And we tried a bunch of different ad solutions, but it was a combination of things. Mostly the kind of stories that we were known for. You know, politicians complaining about video games and trying to pass legislation about video games. That was over. That didn't happen anymore. So, the stuff that we cut our teeth on was no longer relevant. So we had to cover different things, which people didn't seem to find as interesting. Still, if we could have found an advertising solution that would have allowed us to work our full-time jobs and still keep the site going, that would have been lovely. I would have loved to keep that site going, and I'm glad it can continue, at least in spirit, a bit with this podcast. There's still some game politics flavor that lives on Molehill Mountain, I think. Tiger says Facebook, Twitter, and the like don't really move unless the fire is at their feet. It's very true. Problem is nope. It's a positive show, so not going there. So instead, what's next on my list here? So instead, we'll talk about cartoons. I am a child of the 80s. I was born in 1980, so I grew up with a lot of classic cartoons. Your Ghostbusters and G.I. Joe and Ninja Turtles was a little bit later, but Transformers and He-Man and all that good stuff. In the last decade or so, we've been fortunate enough to see revivals of many of these properties. She-Ra came back, ran 5 seasons over the last couple of years and was really, really great. He-Man is on its way back. In fact, it was revived like 10 years ago and was actually pretty good. Thundercats has been revived twice, once about 10 years ago and once in the last year, 2 completely different versions. Voltron came back a handful of years ago, and I haven't watched it, but I hear it's quite good. Transformers, Ninja Turtles, they actually never went away. So, Jordan says, where's my Snorks reboot? Tiger says, 80s cartoons always tried to sell you toys. Then the FCC passed a regulation that limited advertising. Kind of interesting, to be honest. Yeah, it is an interesting topic, and how the shows worked around that. So, with all of these revivals that happened, I was thinking, other than Gem and the Holograms, which I'm still in the middle of watching, and watch with me if you like. It's streaming on Tubi, and I'm doing a kind of video diary as I watch my way through the 65 episodes of Gem and the Holograms, which is a wonderful show. Really like it. Would be interested in seeing a new version of that in whatever form it takes. But I was thinking, you know what I'd really like to see a new version of? Ghostbusters. And it doesn't need to specifically be the original real Ghostbusters team. It doesn't need to be the Extreme Ghostbusters or the 2016 Ghostbusters. It can be one of those. It could be all of those. It could be none of those. I'd like to see another Ghostbusters cartoon, please. I think it could be great. Jordan needs more Mask. SWAT Cats hasn't been revived, but they're looking for someone to pick it up. Do wonder how they will apply that to YouTube. I mean, I see a lot of YouTube channels that would fly in the face of that regulation. Yeah. The real Ghostbusters is, can you see it behind me? Yeah, it's right there. I have the Firehouse box set, which is the entire run of the real Ghostbusters. really a genuinely great show. I mean, there were a lot of episodes that were not good, but there are a surprising number of genuinely really good, really strong, really memorable episodes in that run. And it's like 125 episodes or something like that. Extreme Ghostbusters I saw a little bit of. I actually wouldn't mind tracking down a box set if it exists and just watching the whole thing. Maybe that's the next project after Gem and the Holograms. While I didn't agree with the design aesthetic of Extreme Ghostbusters, I did really like the fact that they went ahead and just did an entirely new cast. Although Egon was still there as kind of the mentor character. And you had Janine was in there, and the other Ghostbusters, cameoed occasionally. But for the most part, it was Kylie, Eduardo, Roland, and someone else. Just a new team of college kids who were taking one of Egon's teaching a college course, and it's like the only 4 kids in his class because no one cares. And they become the next Ghostbusters. And the few episodes I saw of it, I thought was genuinely really good. Now, I don't know if I just caught the few good episodes of the run, or if my standards are low, and when it comes to Ghostbusters, they definitely are, because that's my favorite property, but it has continued on in comic books, some of which I've read and are pretty good. So, Ghostbusters 2099. I do remember, or Human Busters. I do remember Crime Busters. There's an episode of the real Ghostbusters where they there are no ghosts, but there's plenty of crime. So they tune the proton packs to like make an energy cage, which was weird. And then the ghosts come back. So it's not like a paradigm shift for the show or anything. Oh man, just Attack of the Yawns. I think the problem is, it's like, Andrew, why do you yawn so damn much during these shows? I think what it is I live alone, so I don't talk. Since a little bit yesterday, this is the most air that's gone through my throat since I was on a conference call yesterday morning. So, I think that might have something to do with the constant damn yawning. I apologize for that. But, yeah, so, some new revivals that I'd like to see is I'd like to see more Gem and the Holograms, even though I still have, where am I? I think I'm on episode, I think I have 20 more episodes to watch, although, 26 or 7 more to upload. Because I keep a couple of weeks ahead. Great show, really loving it. Hoping it finishes strong. So wouldn't mind to see. Be interesting to see what a new Gem and the Holograms would be. Would it take place in the 80s? Would it take place in modern day? Would it be a retelling of all the original characters? I mean, Ghostbusters, you can have a new team. That's easy, but is Gem and the Holograms really Gem and the Holograms without Gem and the Holograms? I mean, I guess you could have different characters as long as it was, a band that does the hologram thing. It's like, but I mean, if you're going to do that whole thing, then may as well just be those characters, right? Let's see. Captain Power reboot? Okay. Jordan would say Human Busters is in regards to along the lines of ghosts hunting humans. That would be interesting. They have had in the original series ghosts that try to, like poltergeists and stuff, who try to get in the way of humans or manipulate humans in some ways. Yeah, what if ghosts actually started their own anti-Ghostbusters biz? Like, they see humans as being in their way, so they have, oh my god, I'm trying to haunt this house and there's people living there. Human busters, go get them out of the house. Could be something there. That could be fun. Um, but that and but Gem and Ghostbusters. I'd like to see. I'm just greedy and I want more of the things I like. So isn't that just supernatural-esque chaos? I have no idea because I've never seen the show, so don't know. But damn. I'm just gonna keep yawning, so I think we'll call it here. And those are all the things I can be happy about. Hooray! I made it an hour being super positive. Super pos. So, join me tomorrow afternoon, noon Pacific Standard Time, for a game called Forgiveness, which is which is an escape room game. But apparently the gimmick here is you take a survey, a personality quiz essentially, and then it generates a escape room based on the deadly sin that you most closely identify with. You know, sloth, wrath, lust, gluttony, whatever. So I played the prologue a little bit just to make sure it runs and it's not a pain in the butt to play. And it's a little, the controls aren't like the greatest. It's essentially WASD and point with the mouse. I'm like, okay, good enough. But escape rooms can be fun. So join me tomorrow, noon Pacific Standard Time, for an escape room game. Should be a lot of fun. In the meantime, hope y'all having a good week. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and I hope I managed to be sufficiently positive. So take care, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.